let's at least put on a couple of widgets and show how we're going to do that. And then we'll leave it wherever we have to and pick it back up tomorrow. So the most common type of widget and the most clear example of event-driven programming is a button, because buttons exist to be clicked, right? So if we want to make some buttons, you can go then, and as you go here, right, you can do a JButton to do buttons, and then we're going to talk about how to light those up and make them work later, but let's at least get our buttons on. So I'm going to create two buttons. I want one button that when I click it, it beeps, and I want another button that when I click it, it closes the application. They're not going to work today, right? But again, and by the way, we're building all of this from scratch to gain the knowledge. If you were really designing this on a day-to-day basis for your work, you would not go to this extent. You would use some sort of designer. I'll show you how to get into that in IntelliJ next time. But we have to learn the basics of what these things mean, or we won't understand what the designer's creating for us, right? And how to tweak the things. So to make those things, I'm going to make new button objects. One's going to be called beep. One's going to be called close, right? I'm going to make two buttons, and I'm going to put them on the panel. It's easy to do it. All I have to do is instantiate a new JButton, and at the same time, I can give it the text that's going on the button. Right? So I can say, hey, you're going to have the text beep on it, and you're going to have the text close on it. Okay? Makes sense? These don't exist in our world yet. I mean, we've created the objects, but the objects are not on our JPanel, right? So one step we have to do is add them to the JPanel, but we also got to tell it where we want those to be, right? How big do you want it? Where do you want it? Etc. Okay. By the way, one little step, and we'll talk about this more when we have time, one other little step is I'm also going to say set layout, right? I'm going to do this because what this says is let me do layout manually. Again, there are many, many tools that can help you. There are layout managers that when you throw widgets onto this JPanel, it will automatically place them for you based on whatever you say in a grid pattern or in a north to south pattern or in a whatever. But again, we're trying to learn this stuff. So we're going to take sort of the manual road in a lot of ways. And so what you are saying here is, hey, panel, I know you got a lot of layout managers that you can use to help me. I don't want any of them, right? I'm just going to do this stuff manually so that I can understand everything. Okay, so that's asking for no help with layout. Okay, because of that, then we're going to do something like this. We're going to say, hey, JButton, we want to set your bounds, right? We want to set your bounds. I want you to start at 150, 60, and I want you to be, right? I want you, now this is offsets, remember, from our little J frame, from our JPanel actually, right? This is offsets from the top right. The top right is considered 0, 0. So we're saying go over 150, go down 60, and then make the button 80 wide and 30 tall. Okay, so within our 300 by 200 space, go over 150, which is halfway-ish, right? Go down 60, and then draw the thing there, okay? So it's offset from the top left-hand corner, right, in pixels. It's always X before Y, and then width and height, right? X, Y, width, and height. And luckily, IntelliJ actually gives us those little hints, right? So it's easy to see, okay? So we know we've told the button where we want it to be. Now, all we have to do is throw it onto the JPanel. And it's really easy to talk to the JPanel. It's friendly. We say, hey, we just want to add the JButton to you, right? Throw the JButton on there. And it's going to go where it knows to go, at its boundaries, its positions. And we're going to do the same thing with the close button, right? We're going to say close.setBounds, and I want it to go at 50, 60, 80, 30, right? And then I'm going to throw that onto that as well. And maybe since it actually comes first, maybe it's easier for you to understand if I do this, boom, 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 right? I just move it up because that's to the left of the other one, and maybe it's easier for your eye to see we're going 50 before we go 150, whatever, right? Whatever's easiest for your brain. So make the button object, set its boundaries so it knows where it should appear on your JPanel, then toss it onto your JPanel by calling add. Okay. That's all you got to do. We're going to run it and we're going to see if we get a button. Here it comes. Woohoo! What? No clapping, no applause, nobody's excited. All right. I see how you all are. Okay. This is not much code to make a whole little application, right? We haven't made it do anything fun, but come on. At least we're making stuff happen, right? It's pretty good. Thanks. All right. Now, notice nothing happens, right? You can click the button and it's a button. It looks like a button. It depresses when you click it, right? These look like legitimate buttons. Everything's cool. They just don't do anything yet because we haven't done our part of that event-driven programming, right? We have made them sit there, but we haven't told them that we want to respond to any events, right? We haven't said, hey, when your button clicks, we want to run some code, right? So we're not responding to anything. I think of these as being buttons with no ears. Nobody's listening. Nothing's attached to those. There's no events that are going to be triggered when they click. We haven't written any code to respond to those events when they click. So they're just kind of sitting there inert, but they are buttons, right? They function as buttons. They just don't do anything. Go ahead, Ben.
So I feel like there's a stereotype in the, programming world about like, not necessarily HTML developers, but people who develop GUIs and how it's kind of like, I don't know. I just feel like I've heard people say that it's not cumbersome, but it's boring. And I don't know, like since you were at Microsoft, like, what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, and the good news about that, or the good news and bad news is if you're hired as a programmer, you're probably not going to be doing these things, right? Yeah. They usually hire people who are smarter about UI design, who have design degrees, or who have, human machine interface background. Like generally they're going to hire people for a different set of skills. Programmers, coders are terrible UI designers most of the time. Because if I ask a programmer, like I need to be able to do these 10 things, they'll line up 10 buttons, 5 on this row and 5 on this row, right? That's how programmers design things. They're like, there's your buttons. You asked for 10 things. There's your buttons. Well, no, that sucks, right? That's horrible. Those are the people who design the remotes on all the new damn TVs, right? Who they have no sense of the fact that in the dark, I want to be able to find certain buttons that move forward and backward. They just put a bunch of buttons in the row and think that that's a good way to design a UI or a remote control. No, it's not, people. Right? That's not how it works. So, the good news is you're probably not going to be hired to do this unless you want to specialize in that stuff. And then you start learning how to do the usability training and how to guide the eye and how big to make things and how to make the color palettes, and that's a whole other set of skills. And yes, they're usually not going to be the highest level programmer types because they're not doing the programming, right? They're usually not programmers at all. A lot of times their job is to design the UI and say, here, programmers, go use this thing, right? Here's what I want it to look like. Now you go code it and make it do the things that I asked you to do, right? Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And same thing with web design, right? People get web design degrees and think that that's going to make them a programmer and make them a lot of money. Hate to break it to you. A lot of times, not so much, right? Web design is its own thing. It's useful. We want web designers in the world. It's not the same as a high-level programming job, right? Not the same set of skills, okay? You can make a dialogue. You can make it pretty. You can make it come to life with HTML, DHTML and fancy stuff like that. Not the same as a really deeper kind of coder, right? Not the same at all, okay? So, yeah. All right, so we're going to run out of time. We, in fact, are very close to that. So I can't go beyond this without really getting into another deeper topic. So I think what we'll do is we'll stop here.